Book 1, The Blazing Ronin, Wandering Blades. Chapter 14, The Ninja Village Betrayal. Akira led his warriors through the dense bamboo forest, his emerald katana held at the ready. According to the merchant Nakamura's instructions, the hidden path to the legendary ninja village lay just ahead, concealed by ancient warding spells. At the Ronin's side strode Hana, the former Crimson Lotus assassin. The lithe kunoichi moved with her usual feline grace, her kama scythes gripped tightly as she scanned their surroundings for any potential threats. Despite her outward poise, Akira could sense the undercurrent of tension thrumming through Hana's form. This forest, this path they walked, it was all intimately familiar to the assassin. For the ninja village had been her home for many years before her violent falling out with Katsumi. The Ronin's emerald gaze slid to Hana, studying her inscrutable expression from behind her mask. He knew there were still lingering shadows surrounding the kunoichi's past, regrets and divided loyalties that could potentially undermine everything. But she had sworn herself to his cause, to walk the path of the blazing Ronin into the very fires of oblivion itself. Akira could only hope that her convictions would prove strong enough to overcome whatever demons still haunted her. Finally, the warriors crested a rise and found their path blocked by an ornate wooden torii gate, covered in archaic wards and runes. Hana stiffened, her entire body seeming to tense as she studied the ancient portal. "We're here," she murmured, her lightly accented voice tinged with a mixture of trepidation and resignation. "The hidden entrance to Kazeshima, the legendary ninja village." Akira regarded the kunoichi for a moment before turning his piercing emerald stare to the torii gate. He could sense the power, the ancient warding magics thrumming across its weathered surface. "Then let us put these wards to the test," the Ronin stated, his deep voice resonating with quiet intensity. "For we have need of refuge within Kashima's walls, and whatever knowledge its elders may possess about the path ahead." With those words, Akira began advancing on the gate, his blazing katana leading the way. As he drew closer, the pulsing emerald markings covering his body flared to brilliant life, reacting to the warding seals in a way he could not comprehend. The very air around the Ronin seemed to distort and waver, reality itself bending to his incredible power as the Old One's energies surged forth. Hana and the rest of the vanguard could only watch in stunned silence as Akira made a sweeping gesture with his katana. The warding seals across the torii gate flared brilliantly, and then simply disintegrated, the ancient magics unraveling like dust in the wind. The massive wooden doors groaned in protest before slowly swinging inwards, revealing a narrow path leading down into a hidden valley below. "Incredible!" Hana breathed, her eyes wide behind her mask. "The wardings protecting Kazeshima have stood for thousands of years, renewed by each successive generation. And yet you simply, unmade them with but a gesture." The kunoichi leveled her intense stare at Akira, her next words carrying a hushed sense of awe and trepidation. "Truly, your power grows more formidable by the day, blazing Ronin. I can only pray it will be enough to overcome the challenges awaiting us within those walls." The young warrior regarded Hana for a moment before giving a slight nod and turning to face the path ahead once more. "Then let us press on and discover what awaits within Kazeshima," he stated, his deep voice resonating with quiet menace. "For I sense there are more secrets surrounding this place than even you realize, assassin." With those ominous words lingering in the air, Akira began descending the narrow trail, his allies falling into step behind him. The path wound its way down the mountainside, the thick bamboo forest slowly giving way to an idyllic valley nestled between the towering peaks. And there, nestled in that hidden vale, stood the legendary ninja village of Kazeshima. Akira's breath caught in his throat as he took in the incredible sight, a sprawling complex of ornate wooden buildings and pagodas, surrounded by high stone walls and defensive emplacements. Hana seemed to swell with a mixture of emotions as she studied her former home. Pride, nostalgia, but also a lingering sense of shame and regret that caused her to avert her gaze from the Ronin's searching look. "This was my home for many years," the kunoichi stated, her lightly accented voice tinged with melancholy. where I was raised and trained by the most elite assassins and shadow warriors in all the land. Hana fell silent for a moment, seeming to struggle with some great internal conflict. Finally, she continued in a low, anguished tone. It was here that my rivalry with Katsumi first began to take root. Where I allowed my own hubris and jealousy to fester into something darker, more sinister. The assassin's fists clenched tightly, her entire body seeming to tremble with barely restrained emotion. I have more regrets surrounding this place than you could possibly fathom, Blazing Ronin. If the elders prove unreceptive to our presence, I would not blame you for. Enough, Hana, Akira cut her off, his deep voice laced with quiet rebuke. Your past transgressions are not for me to judge or condemn. We all carry shadows, regrets that continually weigh us down. The Ronin leveled his piercing emerald stare at the kunoichi, his next words carrying an unmistakable weight. What matters is where your loyalties lie now. With the path of redemption and honor, or with the shadows that would seek to drag you back into oblivion. Hana seemed to swell with conviction at Akira's words, squaring her shoulders as she met the warrior's intense gaze steadily. You have my loyalty, Blazing Ronin, she stated firmly. No matter what ghosts or demons from my past we may encounter within these walls. The young warrior held the assassin's stare for a long moment before giving a solemn nod. Then, with his blazing katana leading the way, Akira began striding towards the village gates with renewed purpose. He could sense the eyes upon them already, hundreds of unseen watchers from every shadow and alcove, studying the Ronin's approach with narrowed eyes. Akira's markings flared briefly with ethereal energy, as if in response to the oppressive atmosphere surrounding Kaze's Hima. Finally, the warriors arrived at the main gates. Two ornate wooden portals easily 20 feet high, flanked by a quartet of stone lion statues standing as silent sentinels. No sooner had Akira come to a halt than a series of dull thumps echoed from the high walls above. The Ronin's emerald gaze swept upwards just as a dozen figures seemed to materialize from the shadows lining the battlements. Ninja warriors garbed in form-fitting black bodysuits, their faces obscured by masks and cowls. Each one held a wicked-looking bow at the ready, the razor-tipped quarrels leveled squarely at Akira's chest. You have trespassed onto sacred ground, outsiders, one of the ninja called down in a harsh voice. State your business, or be cut down where you stand. The Ronin opened his mouth to respond when a new figure emerged from the gatehouse, striding forward with an air of quiet authority. An older man garbed in flowing crimson robes, his graying hair pulled back in a simple top knot. Hana stiffened beside Akira, her entire body seeming to tense as she studied the newcomer. The Ronin could sense the undercurrent of apprehension, of barely restrained emotion thrumming through the kunoichi's form. Shinjin-dano, she murmured, her lightly accented voice tinged with a mixture of awe and trepidation. The village's head elder, and my former master. The old man's eyes seemed to blaze from within as he leveled his intense stare at Hana, his next words carrying a biting edge. So, the disgraced assassin returns at last. Tell me, have you finally found the courage to beg for redemption? Or do you simply seek sanctuary within these walls, fleeing whatever troubles you've landed yourself in? Shinjin's eyes narrowed behind his spectacles as his gaze slid to Akira and the rest of the vanguard. And I see you've brought friends this time. More lost souls seeking guidance from those who have transcended such worldly concerns. The old ninja master shook his head slowly, an inscrutable expression playing across his weathered features. You were always a disappointment, Hana. Constantly allowing your emotions and petty human attachments to cloud your judgment. It seems that flaw has only compounded itself over the years. Akira could sense the kunoichi trembling beside him, her entire body seeming to swell with barely restrained emotion at her former master's barbed words. The Ronin leveled his piercing emerald stare at Shinjin, his deep voice resonating with quiet menace. You'll want to watch your tongue, elder, he stated flatly. Hana has pledged her skills and loyalty to my cause, to walk the path of the blazing Ronin and combat the ancient evils threatening to consume these lands. The young warrior's markings flared briefly with ethereal energy, causing the ninja archers above to tense and train their bows more firmly. We have come seeking knowledge and guidance, nothing more. But make no mistake, if you cannot extend the basic tenets of hospitality, we will be forced to seek refuge elsewhere. Shinjin regarded Akira for a long moment, seeming to weigh and measure the intensity of the Ronin's convictions. Finally, he gave a slight nod and swept one hand through the air in a dismissive gesture. Very well, we will hear you out, Blazing Ronin. If only to satisfy my own curiosity about what could possibly unite my former student with such eclectic allies. The old ninja master's eyes seemed to burn from within as he leveled his stare at Akira once more. But be warned, Kashima's ways are ancient, its traditions absolute. If you cannot comport yourselves accordingly within our walls, you will be made to leave by any means necessary. With those ominous words lingering in the air, Shinjin turned on his heel and began striding back towards the gatehouse. The massive wooden doors groaned in protest as they slowly swung inwards, allowing the vanguard entry into the legendary ninja village. Akira felt a strange sense of trepidation tightening his chest as he led his warriors forward, passing beneath the gatehouse shadowed archway. He could sense the eyes upon them from every darkened alcove and rooftop, studying their every move with narrowed gazes. The Ronin's emerald gaze slid to Hana, taking in the kunoichi's tense expression and trembling hands. He knew there were still lingering shadows surrounding her past here, regrets and divided loyalties that could threaten to undermine everything. As the gates groaned shut behind them with a heavy thud, Akira could not help but feel as if they had just ventured straight into the serpent's den. And he dreaded what fangs might be bared before they found their way out again. The following days passed in a blur as the vanguard was subjected to the full extent of Kashima's ancient traditions and rigid ways. Akira and his warriors were separated and subjected to a dizzying array of tests and trials, all under the watchful eyes of the village elders. For Hana, it was a harsh reminder of her former life and training. The kunoichi was pushed to her absolute limits, forced to endure grueling physical and mental challenges that would have broken most warriors within days. But the assassin persevered, her convictions to the path of the blazing Ronin burning brighter than ever before. She would not allow her former masters or the shadows of her past to shake her resolve. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the vanguard was summoned before the village council in Kashima's inner sanctum. Akira strode into the dimly lit chamber with his allies at his back, his emerald katana held at the ready as his piercing gaze swept their surroundings. The room was circular, with a raised dais at its center where the elders sat in a semicircle. Shinjin, Hana's former master, occupied the central position of honor, his expression utterly inscrutable as he studied the Ronin. You and your warriors have undergone the trials of Kazeshima, the old ninja master stated, his voice laced with quiet intensity. And though it pains me to admit, you have all persevered admirably. Shinjin's eyes seemed to blaze from within as he leveled his stare at Akira, his next words carrying an unmistakable weight. Which is why it brings me no pleasure to inform you that we cannot provide the guidance or sanctuary you seek within these walls, Blazing Ronin. For you have placed your faith in a path that runs contrary to Kashima's most sacred tenets. A shocked silence fell over the chamber as the weight of the elder's proclamation hung in the air. Akira felt his breath catch in his throat, his mind struggling to process Shinjin's words. They were being denied entry. Turned away from the legendary ninja village after enduring all of their grueling trials and challenges. The Ronin opened his mouth to respond when a harsh voice rang out from the shadows. Did you really think we would so easily welcome you after your defiance, Ronin? Akira whirled, his katana leading as a figure emerged from the shadows at the edge of the chamber. The young warrior's eyes widened as he recognized the unmistakable silhouette of Katsumi, Hana's former lover and rival assassin. The kunoichi leveled her intense stare at the Ronin, her next words dripping with contempt. You and your misguided allies seek to combat the natural order, to defy the inevitability of chaos and oblivion that will one day consume everything. Katsumi's eyes seemed to blaze from within her mask as she slowly drew a pair of wicked-looking kama scythes, the blades gleaming in the dim torchlight. And for that arrogance, you will not be leaving these walls unscathed, I can promise you that. Hana tensed beside Akira, her entire body seeming to tremble with barely restrained emotion as she studied her former lover. The Ronin could sense the undercurrent of anguish, of lingering regret surrounding their violent falling out all those years ago. Katsumi. The assassin breathed, her lightly accented voice tinged with a mixture of shame and simmering fury. So the legends about you were true after all. You've thrown your lot in with the forces of darkness, just like you did all those years ago when you served Lord Ito without question. Katsumi cut her off with a harsh bark of laughter. Do not take the moral high ground with me, failed one. We both know where your true loyalties lie. The kunoichi assassin leveled her scythes at Hana, her next words carrying a biting edge. With the shadows and oblivion itself. You were simply too weak to fully embrace your destiny as an agent of chaos. Akira could sense the venom, the barely restrained fury radiating from Hana at her former lover's barbed words. The assassin's hands tightened around her kama hilts until her knuckles shone bone-white, her entire body seeming to tremble. That's enough, both of you, the Ronin shouted, his deep voice laced with quiet menace as he leveled his katana between the two kunoichi. We did not come here seeking violence or conflict with Kazeshima. Akira's emerald gaze swept over the gathered elders, taking in their impassive expressions as the weight of his next words hung in the air. We came seeking knowledge. Guidance to help prepare us for the challenges awaiting on the path ahead. A path that could very well be this world's last defense against the return of the Defiler and the fires of oblivion itself.